Erica, it's good to see you. I'm just wondering what you would like to tell the vice president if you had the opportunity to see her face to face. What would you ask her and tell her?
Yeah, hi, Jose. Thank you for having me again. I would ask her, as someone who's running against one of the most anti-immigrant candidates we have seen in recent time, one of the most anti-immigrant former presidents, right, who has been making up lies, who has been making up all kinds of false accusations against the immigrant community, against migrants, asking or telling people, right, that we're basically less than human, right? He's been dehumanizing us. And I would ask her to stand up to that. As someone who has lived in California, as someone who was a senator of California, who has also done good stuff on immigration when she was there as a senator, that she stands up to that. And also to talk about not just what she sees and what she hears from Border Patrol, but also, I'm hopeful that she can talk to organizations that are on the ground, also receiving and welcoming people, migrants who have been making really hard and long journeys to seek safety in this country. And unfortunately, that's not something that she has focused as much on. But, you know, to me, it's important also to ensure that we're uplifting the humanity of our immigrant community.
You know, Erica, the issue of immigration and also the issue of migrants and men, women, and children is so politicized, I think maybe now more than ever, but it's always been something that is easily utilized and exploited by politicians. I'm just wondering, like this whole issue of the border bill, you know, that's become a political piñata, I think, for a lot of political sides on both sides. Yeah. You know, that border bill includes, for example, the building of the wall in areas like Arizona. And so I'm wondering, where is the talk about that? The ethos, the men, women, and children.
There isn't, and unfortunately, that's where our narrative has, you know, it's been going in a direction of speaking of this issue as if it was just about security, it was just about criminality, and that's not the case. I know that because I am an immigrant. I came here undocumented, and I speak and work with people who have come to this country to seek safety, and their stories and their realities have really not been a central part of the conversation on immigration, right? And it's just, it's frustrating to me to see that. And, you know, as your previous question, and as something that I keep saying, if I could advise Senator, or now Vice President Harris and candidate, is that it's important to continue to tell the story of our community, the story of people like my mom who was raided at some point. Our home was raided, and how that is going to affect not just immigrants in this country, but citizens, people who live in mixed status families, and that the other person who's running, Donald Trump, has promised to really do a mass deportation of people like my mother, people in our communities, and that's going to really affect not just us as immigrants, but this country. So I would keep on also talking about that, not just about this issue as if it was just about security and criminality, because it's not. It's about human beings trying to make a journey to this country and to seek a better life, to contribute really to this nation.
Yeah, and Erica, I don't think there's any question about how Donald Trump thinks and feels. I mean, he has said, if he wins, he will create the largest deportation force in history. Separation of families, no problem. He's clear on his positions. He's very clear on it. And I'm just wondering, Erica, there hasn't been any comprehensive immigration reform in this country since 1986. And then where is the talk of the dreamers? Where is the talk of the millions of people that live in this country, that contribute to our economy, that are part of the society, our culture and our economy, and that have mixed status immigration families? And that reality which affects so many people, nowhere to be seen, nowhere to be talked about.
That's correct. And I'll tell you this, Jose, that if we do end up in a situation where Donald Trump is the president again, if we do end up in that situation, people in this country are going to see the consequences of mass deportation. They're going to see the consequences of family separation. We already saw it, and we saw it on a scale that perhaps we would. It could be even bigger, right? If he gets elected. And as I mentioned before, I know how it feels to see your mother being taken from your home. My mom came to this country because she was seeking asylum from domestic violence, and she ended up being taken from her own children, in front of her own children, handcuffed. And the only crime she committed was coming to this country to seek a better life for us. And that's the story of millions of people in this country that now have become invisible because the entire conversation on immigration has been focused on the border, has been focused on security. And so I do hope that the Harris campaign can tap into those stories, because I know Harris has worked with those families. Harris has worked with the community. And we need to push back on those narratives about our communities, the narratives that are really just lies, right? What just happened in Ohio. People have literally been targeted because of the current narrative about our communities, our immigrant communities.
Erika Andiola, I'm always grateful to have the chance to speak with you. My admiration for you is constant. Thank you, Erika.